Good evening, everyone. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing the most incredible human being that I know. I want to welcome you all to this Monday night training, and yeah, it is absolutely. I'm just giddy with excitement to introduce the beautiful Emma to you all this evening. She is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other through this incredible community for just over 2 years now, and she's literally my sister from another mister. We speak every single day, several times a day, and I honestly think that I would have probably been a different person if it wasn't for knowing her. You know, we just bounce ideas off one another, and I'll be forever grateful for this community because of knowing this beautiful soul. So I cannot wait to see her shine this evening. I'll just read a little bit about her so you can get excited to hear what's coming. So she is wife to Houston, who she has been with since she was however old. She is a mother of her beautiful 2 boys, Jermaine and Jalen. She's just recently moved to the Gold Coast from New Zealand. She has a bachelor in psychology and a graduate diploma in HR. She is inspired to help women find their true greatness through our incredible Mesh movement. And tonight she's going to talk about her life story and how she was brought up and how joining this community has helped her grow into the person that she's meant to be, finding her own voice, owning her identity. And it's all started from simply saying yes to an incredible opportunity 2 years ago. So yeah, take it away, beautiful Emma. I'm so proud of you. Smash it.
That was absolutely amazing, Vanessa. I didn't even know you were introducing me when you started talking. My heart sank just because we are since joining this community, I've made this amazing relationship with Vanessa, and that really meant a lot to me for Vanessa to introduce me. I thought Joel I was prepared for Joel. But things change, so I've got to adapt, really. But I just really wanted to come on here and just say, Joel approached me on Friday morning. And Friday morning was quite an emotional time for me, which I'll get into a little bit later about. But he approached me and he had sent a message, and I hadn't read it just because of what was going on that morning. I was actually going in for surgery. And then maybe 5 minutes later, he messaged again, and he goes, he asked me if I wanted to do this call, and then 5 minutes later he said, instead of going back and forth with saying why you wouldn't want to do this, just say yes. And I read both messages at the same time, and for a second I was like, oh my God, why would he want me to share my story? But with my story for the last 6 months, which I'll go into further on a little bit later on, I've been through an amazing journey for myself, and I've grown so much, and I've shared a lot about me being real and raw and vulnerable to people. And it's really opened up a whole new network for me and just me stepping into myself. So when he asked me to do this, I was like, hell yeah, it would be an honor. Whereas 6 months ago, I'd have been like, not even opened the message, or read the message, pretended I didn't see it, and just avoid Joel for the rest of the week, the weekend. So I just want to say thank you, Joel, for letting me step into this stage, into the zone, and share my story. So when Joel approached me and asked me to share my story, the first thing that came up to me is, what could I inspire, or how can I empower the people watching this call tonight? And the first thing that came up to me was just my story in general. And I'll get into it, and I hope that what I explain kind of portrays how saying yes to this business 2 years ago really has impacted me as a person and helped me grow into the person I was meant to be and get onto my soul purpose. So I'll go straight into my life. So when I was younger, I'm a part of a family of 7. My mum and dad, well, they have 5 kids. My mum was in a previous marriage, so I have an older half brother. And I really want to share with you how I was born. I haven't shared this with many people, but it will go into what at the end of this call with what has happened with me. So when my mum was about to have me, she was on a monitor, and my dad noticed that my heart rate started to drop. And my mum went into an emergency C-section, and they didn't know if I was alive or dead before they pulled me out. Clearly I was alive, but my mum always said to me when I was younger, how her children were born is how their personality showed up, like how they were throughout, like growing up. And I never understood that. With me being an emergency C-section, I always thought, am I a worry? Like, was I like I could never understand that until what's just recently happened with me. And that really, like, it always made me think, like, I always felt different, especially with that, like, you know, being an emergency C-section, not knowing if you were alive. And my mum and dad, they, bless their heart, they're very beautiful people. We were brought up in a church. I was born in a small country town called Young in New South Wales. And my mum and dad, my mum's part Aboriginal, so she's very tan skin like me, but my dad has very fair skin. He's from New Zealand. And if you saw my dad, you would never think my dad's my dad. He's got blue eyes, he's light skin, he used to have blonde curly hair. It's a bit grey now, and he's lost those curls. But for me, I have brothers. I have four siblings, 3 brothers and 1 sister, and we're all different colours. Like, I'm the darkest out of my siblings, and 3 of them are white. And for me, growing up, it was very confusing because I was this tan girl, a part of this white family, and being brought up in a small country town that was predominantly white. I just fitted in, but when I knew I really didn't fit in, I just couldn't. There were certain things that stood out, like when I was going out with friends and stuff, and they would have parties, I would get left out quite a lot, and I could never understand why me. Like, my friends, like a really close family friend, he actually he had a party one time. I was only maybe 8 or 9, and I grew up with this person, and he had a party, and he invited everyone else but not me. And that really, really hurt me. And so at a young age, I learned how to be resilient against people. And it just built this character of me that I knew I was different, but I just could never fit in. My older brother, he's from a different previous marriage, and he took a lot. I learned from a young age from him. He took a lot of his pain from his dad never really talked to him, whereas I was very close with my dad, and my dad was very close with my older brother as well, not being his biological father, but he was still a good dad. But my brother took a lot of his pain out on me, and I always just felt I was the one that kind of was always getting attacked from other people. And when I grew up, it was like, when I joined this business, and I'll go into why, like, I found out reasons why a lot of this happened. So being in Australia, when I was younger, being part Aboriginal, and not knowing anything about my culture. My mum didn't know much about her culture, and that's why we were brought up very white. It was quite confusing for me. But one thing that I knew and it gravitated to was sport. Sport was my go-to. I was very talented at sport. I played netball and basketball, swimming, athletics, cross country. I was, in my age group, I would be the go-to player. And at a young age, I learnt how, like, when I was 10, I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning every summer, like summer morning, and going to swim training, and then go to school, and then I'd go back home and then go swim again and train again. So I learned at a very young age that how to have discipline, work ethic, and just that never give up attitude. And sport was just the thing that made sense to me. But I was a huge people pleaser when I was younger, and that really, I lost my voice. I let people step all over me, and then we moved over to New Zealand. And I remember before I moved to New Zealand, my older brother said to me, you're going to love it in New Zealand. You're just going to be another brown person. You're going to fit in. Everyone's going to love you. And when we moved, I was 13. And to be honest, I loved it when I moved to New Zealand, because that's exactly what happened. I just fitted in. And for me, I was starting at high school over there. And over in New Zealand, they don't have, they have an intermediate. So they go from primary, intermediate to high school. And so when I was in Australia, I went from primary school straight to high school. But because of that intermediate gap in there in New Zealand, I was going into high school when new girls were going into high school. So my mum and dad were like, perfect time for her just to make new friends. Everyone's going to make new friends. And I remember when we first moved there, Mum and Dad said to me, now look, like, you're only allowed to play one sport. And sport was really my expression, what I just connected with, what made sense to me. And so I decided to go with basketball, because I'd done really well in basketball in Australia. I'd made New South Wales, and I'd had Australian coaches looking at me. And so I thought, well, going to New Zealand, it will flow. And so when we moved over, I made friends easy. Like, it was pretty easy making friends. But what this thing happened was the same thing with people not inviting me to things happened over in New Zealand as well. And I always just couldn't figure out, like, just the same things happened over and over again, and me getting left out, girls being nasty to me. And it was very hard. And I just didn't feel like I fit, like, even though I was another brown, like I was amongst the Māori community and the Polynesians over there, I just didn't feel like I fitted in at all. I had close friends, but I just built walls up, and I started to resent people. And like, I remember one time a girl said to me at basketball, and if you're a basketball fan, if you haven't seen Love and Basketball, it's a movie. It's one of my greatest movies that I watched throughout my whole life playing sport. And one of the girls said to me, hey, Emma, you look like Monica. She's one of the main characters on the movie. You look like her, and you play like her. You play such a beautiful game. And one of the girls come over to me and was just like, don't say that to her. She's so cocky already. But my mum and dad taught me, and I didn't do anything about it. I actually walked away. And the reason why I walked away is because my mum and dad told me at such a young age, don't worry about what other people say about you. It's their problem. Be polite, be kind. And so I thought, well, that's her problem, like, you know, and I walked away. But what I realized is I was sacrificing my own voice. And it really impacted me. I never stood up for myself in high school. And it was really hard. It was very hard. Not saying that high school was hard, like it was hard, but that, like, I just couldn't understand a lot of stuff. But just felt like it was just this continuous loop going on. And then when I was 15, I actually met my husband. That's what you're meant to say, Vanessa, at 15. And there was something about him. I gravitated to him very quickly. He was very certain with what he said. Everyone loved him. He could say one thing and it probably could have been not the nicest thing, but people just respected him. And what I didn't realize, I loved that trait about him. And he always said to me, why do you let girls do what they do to you? And I could never have an answer. I just said, Mum and Dad taught me how to be polite, how to just be nice to people. So he was kind of like my comfort blanket, comfort zone, basically, from a very young age. But what I didn't realize is I loved all those traits about him, but it was really traits that I had within myself, but I just didn't recognize myself. So I attracted him into my life at such a young age, and now we're still together and we're 30. I went to, after high school, I finished high school and I went to university. So I was a person that never broke the rules, right? I wagged once at school and I was so scared. I know. I was so petrified. I thought I was going to get in so much trouble. I even told my mum and dad. Like, that's how such of a goody good I was. Like, I followed the rules. Because I was a huge people pleaser and I wanted to please people. And that's why I went so hard out at my sport, because it made me feel happy. But it also, I felt like it was something that my mum and dad could be proud about me, because I invested so much money into me. And so I did the right thing. I finished school. I got the good grades. I went to university and I studied psychology. And I absolutely loved psychology because I loved people. I always ask questions. Why do people do this? Like, why does that family do that? And what I learned, I thought that I was going to learn about other people, but I actually learned more stuff about myself. And I think that's why I gravitated to this community so much, even though it took a while for me to do that. But it took a few years. It was probably like 6 years down the track till I got to this business. But when I was graduating, I actually fell pregnant. So when I walked the stage, I had my firstborn baby in my belly, and then I became a mum. And I always said I wanted to be the best mum for my son. And when I meant that, I didn't mean just like, I feel sometimes people throw that around, but with me, I meant that like what I did, everything I did that like every day was for my son. Like I wouldn't go out and party because I wanted to be a good mum and be home to my son. I was 22 at the time, and I had friends that had kids and they'd be out partying. And to me, it just didn't make sense. Like I didn't want to party. Like I do drink occasionally, but I just never got the whole thing. If people try to peer pressure me to do stuff, my dad always taught me to respect yourself. And that's one thing that I was very good at, is saying no to things that would harm my body or make me do silly stuff, basically. And then I ended up having my second son. But what I realized once I had my two sons, I had lost myself even more as a person. I put my boys before me, and I always put myself last. And as many mums do. And joining this community really made me realize how much of a people pleaser I was, and how much self-worth I didn't have for myself. And so I ended up becoming a flight attendant, which was amazing. Like, it's totally different from studying like psychology, but I've always loved travel, and I never thought I'd get it, but I got the position, and I know that everything works out. Like, I always have believed everything happens for a reason. And it really got me that value, that high priority of loving travel. And it's something that I love to this day, which I know that I can now with this business travel around and still do work and make impact. But however, I only lasted in that for a year because I missed my children so much. I did short haul from Australia to New Zealand, just did the Tasman. And then we moved down to Taranaki where my mum and dad lived. And not too long after that, that's when I had this business actually come across to me. And Serena, she approached me about the products, and I'd already kind of, it's about 2 months after before I was getting married, and I already ate really good. And like, I thought it was just a multivitamin. I was that skeptical. And I remember walking down the aisle one time in the supermarket, and I said to my husband at the time, look, I think this is Serena's doing. I think it's a multivitamin. Like, I've never taken pills before. And at the time she had actually said, can I send you the link? And I was like, yeah, sure. Send me the link. And she followed up. She did all the right things. And I'm going to be hand on my heart, I never watched that link. I pretended like I did, but I just said, no, it's not for me. I eat enough fruits and veggies. And then watching her for 6 months grow as a person was incredible. And by that time I had been married. I got married and I had finished my graduate diploma in HR. And I'd stopped doing my part-time work because it wasn't serving me as a person. It was just a paycheck just to help me save for my wedding. It wasn't serving me at all. So I knew I was destined for better things. But I thought it was getting a corporate job in HR, because I just studied HR because it went with my psychology degree. I did all the right things that society put on us, work hard, get a good corporate job, make money. But the one thing is, I couldn't get a job in HR. I kept on getting turned down, saying I don't have enough experience in the office. And it was very deflating. I started to lose hope in myself. I felt like a failure because I studied psychology and HR. Like, I'd done all the right things, what society told us to do, but I just couldn't get my foot in the door. But 2 months later, after watching Serena grow, I thought, well, if she can do it, what's stopping me? And then that's when I kind of looked into this business. And I thought I was joining this business to make an income, which I am. I love and I really want to make an income. But this 2-year growth for me is not just about the income. It's been the person I've become, the person I realized that I was before saying yes to what I now have become. It made me, we are surrounded by this community of uplifting, incredible people that just continuously pour love on you. They don't even know you. We talk like this over Zoom. And every day I showed up. I was consistent in the business, but I was also consistent in my growth of a person. And I showed up when someone said, we're going to have a Zoom meeting with this, or there's an event here. I showed up. And I worked on myself. And I remember I was only fairly new into the business. And Christine approached me and Kylie approached me and said, we've got conference in Perth in 3 weeks. And I'd only been in the business for 3 weeks. I'd never been to Perth. My best friends lived in Perth. I had 2 best friends that lived in Perth. And one of them actually was one of the girls that I went to high school with, and she's Māori. And she always said to me, when she first met me, she goes to me, why aren't you out loud and proud about being Aboriginal? And because she's Māori, and it's very, over in New Zealand, they're very out loud and proud. They're very proud of their culture. They use a lot of mana, so heart. They're warriors. They're very strong in their ways. And she couldn't understand me, but I couldn't understand her either, because I'd been brought up way different to her. And then when she moved over to Perth, a week later, she messaged me and she goes, I understand the way you are with your culture. So when this opportunity to go to Perth to the conference I was scared. I had no idea. I can't even remember how I paid for it, to be honest. I wasn't working. Somehow I got money and I went to Perth. And I went to conference thinking that this business is going to, thinking that I actually didn't know what I was going to think, but what I didn't realize is how it was going to impact me. I caught the vision, but one thing that really got me was the first thing that happened at conference was an Aboriginal welcoming. And to me, to me, that was so powerful. And I knew right then and there I was meant to be in this community. Because I had, I had been a part of Māori welcoming pōwhiris over in New Zealand. I'd been on Marae's, that's where Māoris, their house is. I'd been to so much, and I felt the spirit. I'd cry every time I'd go there. I'd see a haka, and I didn't realize my own spirit was yearning for my own culture. It was so powerful, and I never expected that. So when you think you're going to say yes to something, you have no idea how powerful it's going to be for you. And I saw David, and if you don't know Nutrition Plus, one of the head people is David, and he is incredible. He's such a funny guy. And he was out the front, like he goes out with the Wakaguri group and they do their performance and stuff, but they also have a stand out the foyer for Nutrition Plus. And if you don't know what Nutrition Plus is, it's our charity for educating Indigenous children predominantly, but also children in general, how important health and nutrition and eating plants are. And they're doing an amazing work around New Zealand and Australia. And so that was the first pretty much performance. And I said, I need to go see this guy. I need to get out of my comfort zone and see him. It took me to the end of the second day of conference. I walked back and forth so many times. And I finally got the courage to go say hello. And I said hello, and I gave him, and I was like, can I have a hug? Because if you haven't been to conference, everyone hugs each other. Everyone's happy. Like it's a different energy. Like it's unreal. You have to go to conference if you haven't been to conference. You are surrounded by the most incredible people. And he goes, yeah, I'll have a hug. And I gave him a hug. And then he goes, what's your name? And I went to speak. And what I've learned since saying yes in this business is I really have suffocated my own voice. So when I go to talk and I need to say something, it comes in my throat. And it's a sign for me to say what I need to say, because I've suppressed so much of my own voice to people please other people, to put other people before me. But this community teaches you to be yourself, be unique, be you. And so I said to him, I went to go say Emma, but I couldn't. I just bawled my eyes out. And if you've ever watched Kim Kardashian cry, it was like that. It was exactly like that. And he was just like, oh my God, who is this crazy girl? I don't even know. Picked me up. And he like literally picked me up and put me over to a table. And he goes, okay, I feel like I need to really talk to you. And I just cried in his arms. And he goes, can you tell me your story? And I go, I'm part Aboriginal. I was born in Australia. I don't know my culture. I moved to New Zealand. I adopted the Māori culture because I didn't realize how much my own identity was wanting love from my own culture. And seeing you guys perform just broke me, but in a good way. But I was crying, so it wasn't like that. It was a lot of like, like ugliness. And he was like, wow, you are incredible. You are so strong for coming to see me. And I remember we have a gala, like there's a gala dinner, and you get to dress up and look pretty and put on your beautiful dress and walk around. And I saw him that night, and he said to me, out of everything, out of this whole conference, You coming to me was my favorite thing out of the whole conference. You don't realize your vulnerability, how much that means to me, because he knows how much our people are disconnected from their own culture. But I was blessed. I realize now how incredibly blessed I am, because I got to feel the Māori culture in New Zealand. I got to see that pride. And it wasn't till that time I realized how ashamed it wasn't ashamed, but how it was more ashamed of my own culture, because I didn't know anything. And yeah, it was just such a powerful time. So that was 3 weeks coming into this business that this whole thing hit me, and I was just like, wow. And I come back from that conference thinking, how can I tell people to be themselves when I haven't even learned any, like, a part of me? And so throughout that whole 2 years, I've been trying to find myself a little bit more, for them encouragement. And it wasn't like anyone saying go find yourself. It's just showing up and seeing people step into their own greatness, using their own gifts and them being themselves. That has really encouraged me, and it's what kept me around. It's not just making the money, helping people with their health, it's the community. It's unreal. And so over time, just working on myself, I realized that my own self-worth was so low was because it's been passed down generational trauma from my nana, who passed away when my mum was in her early 20s with breast cancer, who was Aboriginal, and passed down to my mum. And my mum she has a beautiful heart. She's everyone's mum. When you meet her, everyone loves her. They're like, we wish she could be my mum. But I saw a side of my mum that no one else saw. A mum that didn't have self-worth, that didn't have self-confidence. And it really impacted me. And this business has opened my eyes to what I do on a daily basis impacts my children. And I've decided that I want to change that. I want to break that generational trauma in my family for my boys, so they're so proud of who they are. And that's one of the reasons why I moved here to Australia, so that they could also know their culture, being Aboriginal and Māori, like two beautiful cultures. And so that was really, I find life before saying yes to this business has kind of mirrored my life now, but flipped it to a different perception, and taught me that everything that happened in my life before I joined Dress Plus happened for a reason. And it was only through this journey for me to get where I am now. And there's a person in our team, and if you haven't met Elizabeth Ann Walker, you will eventually. And she taught me, she must have read me like a book, and she knew that I didn't break rules. And she taught me to break rules, but not bad, like just man-made rules, like rules that, not the universal laws. Like for me, she made me start questioning things, which I probably would have questioned before, but because she was so out loud and proud of who she was, it inspired me to start doing that. So now I go out, like one thing is, at last conference in Melbourne, she snuck into conference when we weren't even allowed to, and put stuff all over the chairs so that we could get the best view in conference, compared to the NMDs and the VIPs get really good seating. But she got these amazing seats for us, and she comes out like nothing happened. And I was like, I could never do that. And she goes, and that's why you're going to become my number one rule breaker. Because she knew that I did everything right, but did that mean it was right? Had I been programmed my whole life to do certain things? And I had been, and I've been trying to change a lot of those so that I can be my true self and step into the purpose that I'm meant to be here. So I hope that I've portrayed kind of through telling me my story. it's kind of shown a journey that saying yes to this really has let me be me, and let me realize and grow as a person, you know. And it did it all in my own time. Like, I remember last year I went to Christine and Joel's Unstoppable event, and even then I got an eye-opening experience with that. We had to get put in 2 groups, and we had to find out what does success mean to us. And it goes to the surface layer, and then it goes like an iceberg down to the bottom. And I did it with Brendan, Joel's brother, and he, man, poor guy, he was in it for a treat. He did his was amazing. He did it so quick, and then I did it. And because I've put so many people before me, I've been such a huge people pleaser, I didn't know how to make it about me, be selfish for once. I made it all about my boys. And he's like, no, let's retrack. Let's make it about you. And then I'd get it back to my boys. But it was only because I had this pain that I didn't realize how unselfish I had been for myself. I broke down in tears that day. And I realized from that day, I've learned to be selfish, more for myself, do things for me. I used to feel, or I sometimes still, but I used to feel so guilty spending money on myself. If it was to anyone else, my boys, Houston, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But myself, I would never put myself first. Because I'd learned from my mum, and I'd learned, my mum always put us kids before her own needs. And from me, I've talked to my mum a lot about this, and she's growing as well. Since me growing in myself, she's starting to grow as well, and I'm starting to help change that as well. And so it's just little things just showing up and being consistent that this has really helped me. But in the last 6 months, the most incredible thing has happened to me. And most people would say that it would be the hardest time of their life. But for me, it's been the most empowering and most inspiring time of my life. So, oh my God, I told you, Joel, I was going to cry. So on the 11th of January, I found out I was pregnant, which you'd be excited, right? Which I was. And my boys had only been asking for 2 years since my wedding to have another baby. And so I was pregnant. I was so excited. And then nearly 3 weeks later, I had a miscarriage, which was very, very hard. But what was even harder is the day of my miscarriage, my husband flew to New Zealand for 4 days. And in those 4 days, I miscarried my baby. I had my 2 boys with me, but I did this by myself. My boys were amazing. They were incredible. They stepped up. Like, it's really showing what kind of men they can be. But what I've learned from this business is what is great about this. What is amazing, like, what can I learn from this experience? And at the time, I was obviously in pain. I'd lost my first baby. And it took a couple of weeks for me to really get that answer. And I learned that no matter what I go through, I can do it. I'm so strong. I'm powerful. And I can do things without my husband. I don't need him to be my comfort zone. I don't need him to be my comfort blanket. And I truly believe that he wasn't there with me because of that. It made me step into owning me, really letting me realize that I limited myself because of my own thoughts and my own self-comfort of being scared. And it took one of my babies to sacrifice their life for me to understand that. And I really hold that close to my heart. And so, thank you. So I that happened, and then I thought, because we just moved over from New Zealand, and I thought, okay, we need to get more abundance coming into our life. So I decided to look for work. 10 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant again. And this was a complete shock because I didn't even know you could really do that without getting your period. And a couple of days later, I had a scan. I saw my baby. She had a heartbeat and she was 6 weeks. 2 weeks later, they wanted to have another scan. And that scan, my baby wasn't alive. So that was very, very hard. And so I waited 3 weeks for my body to naturally pass my baby, because I wanted to go through. I've always done everything naturally. I want to try and let my body do what it's meant to do. Hence why I love Juice Plus, because it's literally fruits and veggies, and your body loves that. And so that's what I really wanted to do, was just naturally pass it. But in that time, I had shared my first miscarriage. And what I didn't realize is how many women had actually lost a baby. Not acquaintances, but close family, friends. My own family, my auntie, my cousin, reaching out to me, and they'd never shared their story. I never knew. And from that moment, from my first miscarriage, I knew that with me being real and vulnerable and sharing my story, that I could inspire and empower more people. And that was from my first baby. And my second baby has just helped me grow into the person I want to be. And I've realized from this whole journey, from just saying yes 2 years ago, that this is where I'm meant to be. And for me to step into my own greatness and empower other people and hold that space until they're ready. And I know this community is so much more than just fruits and veggies in a capsule. It's a vehicle for us to impact so many people. But what had actually happened 2 weeks ago, I stopped bleeding. So I thought my miscarriage, my second one, had finished. And then last week I went for a scan, and I found out that I still had some tissue inside my uterus, and it had blood in it. Sorry for all the males on here, and it might be a little bit detailed, but it was stubborn. And I got told that I needed surgery. I could wait for it naturally to happen, but an infection probably could come on, and that would make it worse. And so I broke down in tears, because with my second baby, I had to have a C-section, because my first baby, he damaged me when he came out, basically. And I didn't realize how much trauma I had from that C-section until he said, you're going to have surgery. I thought I was going to have to be awake for my surgery, which was on Friday, when Joel had asked me if I wanted to do this course. So about an hour before I went to the hospital, I was like, shit, yeah, I want to share my story, and I want to empower and inspire people, especially people that have just started out in this business, because you have no idea where this is going to take you. You never know what it's going to bring up, but know that what's happened in your life has happened for a reason, and you are meant to be here. And when the doctor said to me about the surgery, I cried. I was really upset. But what I've learned from this business is, what empowering words can you ask yourself? And I said to myself while I was crying, what is good about this? What can I do to help other people? And what had come to me straight away is, now I can understand and empathize with ladies that have had a surgery or D&C, and I can more relate with them, whereas before I couldn't, because it was all natural. So now I have done both ways, and I can help inspire and help other women get through this. And one thing that I've really, really learned from this business is you will make friends that will impact you, like, incredibly. Like Vanessa, she didn't lie. We talk about probably 8 hours every day. We're each other's dear diary. She's not even in my outline. She's my sideline buddy. I met her in Perth at the first conference, and we connected like, I don't know, gasoline on a fire, if you would say. She's like my white sister. We're just so goofy. Like, we're just the same, but I'm just brown. And something that she said to me, and I shared this with Joel today, and I said to him, we've been doing work together, and we're doing this coaching thing together, and we've been taught about stepping into our higher self. And we did a meditation not too long ago, and we had to meditate. When you go to make a decision, you need to be in that higher self person, that person that doesn't have limitations on themselves. And Vanessa, I asked Vanessa, like, I just assumed people like would have the same as me, but my vision of me was to be on stage, empowering and inspiring people and having my boys next to me. And I feel like this, Joel reaching out to me, is the first time I've ever shared my story at all. Hence why it was probably a little bit rusty, but this is just the first stepping stone for me to share and empower more people. And if you're doubting yourself at all, or if you don't feel like you can ever get to where I am, you should see my first live on Facebook. It was horrible, but keep showing up and being consistent. That's all.
Far out. I'm pretty much speechless. That was that good.
Really?
That was amazing. Yeah, I bet you no one would have known that was your first time sharing your story. So,
yeah,
congratulations. Does anyone
you.
have any questions about this, like about anything that Emma's had to say tonight? Just looking through people's faces. That really was amazing. See what can happen in this business. Yes. I don't know what to say. Usually I've got something smart to say, but I'll just I'll ask you a question, and I'm going to throw you a curveball. If you were crowned Queen of the world today, what would be the first law you pass tomorrow?
Oh, great.
Because you're prepared for the other one, aren't you?
No, I actually didn't, because I was like, what will I say?
Well, I'll ask you that one too.
One law. I don't know. I'm trying to think something smart. I would say that we should be allowed to share our stories through Juice Plus with compliance at the moment, because our stories are so empowering, and that our marketing, something like along those lines, because I feel like network marketing, especially I don't know any other ones, but with Juice Plus, we're just now with compliance with Australia, we're not allowed to share our stories. And that's what makes us so powerful compared to other companies and mainstream companies. So that's what's come to my head. So I'm going with that.
That's a great law. That is a terrific law, because you know what? It's totally fair for beer companies to say, if you drink our beer, hot chicks will like you.
Yeah.
That's totally realistic and fair, isn't it? No.
Yeah. And how not good stuff for your health is allowed to be all over mainstream TV, yet if we say anything about ours, it's just whatever, push it to the side. Where we actually physically help through our stories and people just sharing what it's done for them. So yeah, that's what I'm going with.
The truth will come out eventually.
Yeah.
If we stay in it long enough. And you know what? On a side note, business guy, Joel, if it was easy, there'd be no money in it.
Exactly.
That's why there's money in it, because it's not easy. So be grateful that it's hard.
Definitely isn't easy.
So Okay, so if there was a billboard and the entire planet could see it, what would your message to the world be?
Go with your intuition and use your voice. That just comes to mind just then, so I'm running with that one.
This is the best call in the history of the universe. I'm going to stop the